At just 15 years old, while most teenagers were worrying about homework, exams, and weekend football with friends, one boy walked into one of the biggest stadiums on earth wearing the famous blue and red jersey of Barcelona. More than 80,000 fans watched as he stepped onto the pitch. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't overwhelmed. He played as if he had belonged there his entire life. Within months, football legends, coaches, and former Ballon d'Or winners were asking the same question. Where did this kid come from? Some called him the greatest teenage talent football had seen since Lionel Messi. Others warned the world not to put too much pressure on his young shoulders. But behind the headlines, the records, and the standing ovations was a story almost nobody knew. A story of sacrifice, a story of a young boy who of poverty, a story of a young boy who grew up in one of Spain's toughest neighborhoods, where dreams often disappeared long before they had the chance to become reality. His family wasn't wealthy. His journey wasn't planned. Nothing about his rise was supposed to happen this quickly. Yet somehow, against every expectation, he became one of the most exciting footballers on the planet before he was old enough to vote. How did a child from the streets of Rocafonda become the player trusted by Barcelona, admired by the football world, and feared by defenders across Europe? This is the incredible story of Lamine Yamal, the boy who refused to wait for greatness. Long before football fans around the world knew his name, fate had already written one of the most extraordinary chapters in football history. In 2007, an innocent charity calendar was organized in Catalonia. The idea was simple. Professional Barcelona players would pose with local babies to help raise money for charity. One of those players happened to be a young Argentine named Lionel Messi. At the time, Messi was already becoming one of Barcelona's brightest stars, but nobody could have imagined what his future held. Even less could anyone have guessed the future of the tiny baby placed gently into his arms. That baby was Lamine Yamal. The photograph captured a quiet moment. Messi carefully supported the infant in a small bathtub during the charity photo shoot, smiling gently as photographers snapped their pictures. For years, the image remained forgotten. It sat quietly in family albums while life moved on. No one looked at it twice. Then years later, when Lamine Yamal began breaking records at Barcelona, the photograph resurfaced. Suddenly, the football world was stunned. The image spread across every major sports website and social media platform. Fans called it destiny. Some joked that Messi had somehow passed his magic to the little boy. Of course, football doesn't work like magic. Greatness isn't transferred through photographs, but the image became a symbol. It connected two generations of Barcelona history. One legend was unknowingly holding another. The picture wasn't proof of destiny. It was proof that history sometimes creates moments so unbelievable they seem fictional. To understand Lamine Yamal, you first have to understand where he came from. Not the glamorous Barcelona seen by millions of tourists every year. Not the beaches, not the famous buildings, not the luxury shopping districts. His story begins in Rocafonda, a neighborhood in Mataró, just outside Barcelona. Rocafonda wasn't known for producing football stars. It was known for something else. Working-class families, immigrant communities, limited opportunities. Many parents worked long hours simply to provide food, clothing, and education for their children. Life wasn't easy. Money was often tight. Dreams were expensive. Failure was common. But Rocafonda had something that couldn't be bought. Community. Children filled the streets every afternoon. Football wasn't entertainment. It was life. Goals were made from backpacks. Stones became goalposts. Every small open space became a football pitch. Here, children learned creativity because perfect football fields didn't exist. The ball bounced unpredictably. The ground was rough. The matches were intense. You learned quickly or you went home. Lamine loved every second of it. From the moment he could walk, he wanted a football near his feet. While other children eventually became tired and went inside, Lamine wanted one more. Game. Then another. Then another. Hours passed without him noticing. Neighbors began recognizing the quiet little boy who rarely lost the ball. Even against older children. Even against stronger opponents. He always wanted the football, always. Behind every great athlete stands people willing to sacrifice everything. For Lamine, those people were his parents. His father, Munir Nasraoui, came from Morocco. His mother, Sheila Ibana, came from Equatorial Guinea. They came from different cultures, different backgrounds, and different experiences. But they shared one dream: give their son opportunities they never had. Life wasn't luxurious. Far from it. Every euro mattered. Like countless immigrant families across Europe, they understood the value of hard work. They understood sacrifice. Sometimes that meant long workdays. Sometimes it meant putting their own needs aside. Sometimes it meant making impossible financial decisions. But whenever football entered the conversation, they saw something special in their son. Not because he scored goals, not because he dribbled defenders, because of the joy. Football made him happy in a way nothing else did. That happiness became worth protecting. His parents drove him to training, encouraged him after difficult matches, celebrated small victories, comforted him after disappointments. They never promised him fame. They never promised him millions. They simply promised they would support his dream as long as he continued working for it. Years later, after becoming famous, Lamine would never forget those sacrifices. Every celebration carried the memory of those early years. Every success belonged not only to him, but also to the family that refused to let him give up. Some children enjoy football. Others live football. Lamine belonged to the second group. Teachers noticed he talked about football. Friends noticed he thought about football. Coaches noticed he understood football differently. His first touch wasn't normal. His vision wasn't normal. Even as a small child, he wasn't simply chasing the ball. He was reading the game. He understood space before many children understood passing. He anticipated defenders before they moved. He played with confidence far beyond his age. Adults watching youth matches often found themselves asking the same question: how old is that kid? When they learned his age, the surprise only grew. He played against older opponents without fear. He dribbled naturally. He improvised constantly. Most importantly, he smiled. Football never looked like work. It looked like freedom, and freedom made him dangerous, because fearless players are often impossible to predict. Every football academy dreams of discovering the next great player before anyone else. Barcelona has spent decades searching parks, schools, and local clubs for hidden talent. Scouts constantly travel across Catalonia looking for children with something impossible to teach: technique, creativity, intelligence, personality. When Barcelona scouts watched young Lamine, they didn't just see another talented child. They saw a possibility. They immediately reported back: this boy is different. Soon an invitation arrived. Lamine would have the opportunity every young footballer in Catalonia dreamed about: a trial at Barcelona. For many children, a trial is terrifying. One bad session can end the dream forever. Parents become nervous. Children overthink every touch. Mistakes suddenly feel enormous. But Lamine played exactly as he always had: confident, fearless, creative. He didn't try to impress. He simply played football. Sometimes that's exactly what impresses people the most. By the end of the trial, the coaches had seen enough. Barcelona wanted him. He was only 7 years old. One of the greatest football academies in history had opened its doors. And without realizing it, football history had just changed forever. As the gates of La Masia closed behind 7-year-old Lamine Yamal for the very first time, he stepped into the academy that had shaped legends like Xavi, Andrés Iniesta, Sergio Busquets, and Lionel Messi. But talent alone would not be enough. Inside those walls, every player was exceptional. Every child dreamed of becoming Barcelona's next superstar. Only a tiny handful ever reached the first team. The question was no longer whether Lamine was talented. The question was whether he could survive the relentless competition, the pressure, and the sacrifices required to wear one of football's most famous shirts. And what happened next would leave even Barcelona's coaches speechless. For most children, getting into Barcelona's academy would have been the happiest day of their lives. For Lamine Yamal, it was only the beginning of the hardest journey he had ever faced. La Masia is not an ordinary football academy. It is one of the most famous talent factories in sports history. Within its walls, some of the greatest footballers ever to play the game learned not just how to pass or shoot, but how to think. The academy had already produced legends: Xavi Hernandez, Andrés Iniesta, Sergio Busquets, Carlos Puyol, Gerard Piqué, Pedro, Cesc Fabregas, and above all, Lionel Messi. Every hallway carried memories of players who had once been young boys chasing impossible dreams. Every training ground reminded newcomers of one harsh reality. Talent gets you through the door, character keeps you inside. Lamine understood this almost immediately. No one cared that he had been the best player in his local neighborhood. No one cared how many goals he had scored before arriving. At La Masia, everyone had been the best somewhere else. Every child there possessed extraordinary ability. For the first time in his life, Lamine wasn't unique. He was simply another talented boy trying to survive. Many young players struggle with this reality. Some lose confidence, some become selfish, desperate to stand out. Others simply disappear. Lamine chose a different path. He worked, quietly, patiently. Every training session became another opportunity to learn. Instead of trying to prove he was better than everyone else, he focused on becoming better than the player he had been yesterday. That mindset would soon separate him from everyone around him. As the years passed, something extraordinary began happening. Barcelona's coaches noticed that training with players his own age no longer challenged him enough. He was progressing too quickly, so they made a bold decision. They promoted him to play with older age groups. It was supposed to be a test. Instead, it became a demonstration. Bigger defenders couldn't stop him. Stronger opponents couldn't intimidate him. Older goalkeepers couldn't predict him. Every time coaches increased the difficulty, Lamine adapted, then excelled, then demanded another challenge. It wasn't simply that he dribbled well. Barcelona had seen gifted dribblers before. It wasn't only his speed. Fast players came and went every year. What amazed the coaches was his decision-making. He knew when to pass. He knew when to attack. He knew when to slow the game. He knew when to accelerate. These are qualities many professionals spend years trying to master. Lamine was showing them as a child. One academy coach reportedly described him as someone who always seemed one move ahead. It looked as though football unfolded more slowly in his mind than it did for everyone else. That ability couldn't be taught. It was instinct. Whenever a young left-footed attacker emerges from La Masia, comparisons are almost inevitable. But with Lamine, they became impossible to avoid. He was left-footed. He preferred the right wing. He loved cutting inside. He dribbled defenders with confidence. Almost immediately, headlines began appearing. The next Messi. Barcelona has found another genius. Messi's successor? For many young footballers, those comparisons would have been overwhelming. After all, how do you live up to the greatest player in Barcelona's history? How do you replace someone who won multiple Ballon d'Or trophies? How do you follow a man whose record seemed untouchable? The answer? You don't. Lamine understood something many adults fail to realize. There will never be another Lionel Messi. There doesn't need to be. Instead of trying to become Messi, he focused on becoming Lamine Yamal. His style began developing naturally. Yes, there were similarities, but there were also differences. He relied heavily on quick combinations. He enjoyed creating chances for teammates. His movement became unpredictable. He played with imagination. Most importantly, he never copied anyone. He built his own identity. That decision may have saved his career before it truly began. By early 2023, Barcelona was facing enormous financial difficulties. The club could no longer buy every superstar it wanted. Instead, it turned back to its greatest strength, La Masia. One afternoon, Barcelona manager Xavi Hernandez received reports about a teenager producing unbelievable performances inside the academy. Xavi already knew talent. He had played alongside some of football's greatest names. Very few youngsters truly impressed him, but every report said the same thing. You have to watch this kid. Training sessions were arranged. Soon, the academy player found himself sharing the pitch with seasoned professionals, veterans, international stars, men who had played in World Cups. Most teenagers would have played safely. Simple passes, minimal risks, trying not to embarrass themselves. Lamine did the opposite. He attacked. He dribbled. He demanded the ball. He expressed himself. When training ended, several first-team players reportedly looked at one another in disbelief. How old is he? The answer shocked them. 15. Only 15. Xavi had seen enough. He made one of the boldest decisions of his managerial career. Lamine Yamal would join the first team. April 29th, 2023. Spotify Camp Nou. Barcelona versus Real Betis. Thousands filled the stadium. Millions watched around the world. Few realized they were about to witness history. Late in the match, the substitution board went up. A skinny teenager prepared to enter. The commentators announced his name, Lamine Yamal. At just 15 years old, he became one of the youngest players ever to represent Barcelona's first team. The applause echoed around Camp Nou, but the teenager wasn't interested in applause. He wanted the ball. Within minutes, he nearly scored, then created another chance. Every touch carried confidence. No fear, no hesitation, no respect for reputations, only football. After the final whistle, the football world exploded. Social media filled with highlights. Pundits praised his maturity. Fans couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Barcelona had introduced another extraordinary talent. The future had arrived earlier than anyone expected. For some players, breaking one record defines an entire career. For Lamine, breaking records became routine. Youngest Barcelona starter, youngest player to provide assists, youngest goal scorer in several competitions, youngest player to achieve milestones that had stood for decades. Every few weeks, another record disappeared. Every month, another headline appeared. Journalists eventually ran out of new ways to describe him. The records weren't important because of the numbers. They mattered because of what they represented. Consistency, pressure, maturity. Many teenagers enjoy one brilliant game. Few maintain excellence against Europe's elite. Lamine did, week after week. He wasn't simply surviving, he was influencing matches. Against experienced defenders, against world-class opponents, against clubs filled with international stars. The boy from Rocafonda no longer looked like a promising youngster. He looked like he belonged. Football history is full of wonder kids. Teenagers called the next great player. Young stars expected to dominate for decades. Many never fulfilled those expectations. Not because they lacked talent, because pressure is heavier than talent. Every mistake becomes national news. Every poor performance becomes a crisis. Every comparison becomes exhausting. Lamine suddenly found himself living under constant attention. Journalists followed every match. Fans analyzed every touch. Social media celebrated him one day and criticized him the next. That pressure has broken countless careers. But those closest to Lamine noticed something unusual. He rarely changed, whether praised or criticized. He returned to training with the same attitude. Learn, improve, repeat. His family remained his anchor. His coaches protected him. Barcelona carefully managed his development because everyone inside the club understood one thing. Talent this rare must be nurtured, not rushed. Barcelona had given him an opportunity. Now another nation was calling, Spain. Because of his family background, Lamine was eligible to represent more than one country. The decision wasn't easy. It carried emotion, identity, family history, national pride. Eventually, he chose Spain. And once again, history followed. He became the youngest player ever to represent Spain's senior national team. As if that wasn't enough, he also became Spain's youngest ever goal scorer. His very first international goal announced something extraordinary. Spain hadn't simply found another young player. They had found a future leader. The same confidence that amazed Barcelona supporters now inspired an entire nation. Every appearance increased expectations. Every performance confirmed one belief. This wasn't luck. This wasn't temporary. Football was witnessing the arrival of a genuine superstar. As Europe prepared for the biggest international tournament of the year, millions of fans still saw Lamine Yamal as an incredibly gifted teenager. But within a few unforgettable weeks, he would silence every remaining doubt. He would score one of the greatest goals in European Championship history. He would help Spain conquer Europe. and the boy who once played football on the rough streets of Rocafonda would complete one of the fastest rises the sport had ever seen. By the summer of 2024, Lamine Yamal was no longer just Barcelona's brightest young talent. He had become Spain's biggest hope. When Spain announced its squad for UEFA Euro 2024, many people questioned whether a 16-year-old was ready for such a massive stage. He was about to answer that question in spectacular fashion. From the opening match, Lamine played with the confidence of a veteran. He wasn't intimidated by packed stadiums, experienced defenders, or the pressure of representing an entire nation. Instead, he did what he had always done. He attacked, created chances, and entertained. With every match, his confidence grew. The football world could no longer call him a talented kid. He was becoming one of the tournament's best players. The defining moment came in the semi-final against France. Spain was trailing, and the pressure was enormous. Then, Lamine received the ball outside the penalty area. He looked up. One touch, another. Without hesitation, he curled a breathtaking shot into the top corner. The stadium erupted. Fans couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just a beautiful goal. It was one of the greatest goals ever scored by a teenager in the history of the European Championship. Commentators shouted. Former players stood in disbelief. Social media exploded within minutes. At just 16 years old, Lamine Yamal had delivered one of football's biggest moments. Spain advanced to the final. Waiting for them was England. Millions watched as Europe prepared to crown its new champion. Lamine once again played with maturity far beyond his years. He created chances, stretched England's defense, and showed incredible composure. When the final whistle blew, Spain had won the European Championship. Lamine Yamal was officially a European champion before turning 18. He finished the tournament with memorable performances, crucial assists, and a goal that will be remembered for generations. The boy from Rocafonda had conquered Europe. Many players are fast, many players can dribble, many players can score, but very few combine everything. Lamine's greatest strength isn't just his skill, it's his football intelligence. He knows when to pass, he knows when to attack. He stays calm under pressure. Most importantly, he makes the players around him better. That is what separates good players from world-class players. His coaches often praise not only his talent, but also his willingness to learn. Even after breaking records, he continues to train with humility. He knows that talent opens the door, but hard work keeps it open. Despite everything he has achieved, Lamine Yamal's story is still in its opening chapters. He still dreams of winning the UEFA Champions League with Barcelona. He wants to lift the FIFA World Cup with Spain. He hopes to win the Ballon d'Or, football's greatest individual prize. The expectations will only grow. Defenders will study him. Opponents will try to stop him. The pressure will become even greater. But if his journey has taught us anything, it's this. He has never been afraid of pressure. From the streets of Rocafonda, to La Masia, to Camp Nou, to the biggest stage in European football, he has always answered every challenge with courage. Yamal's story reminds us that greatness doesn't begin with fame. It begins with a dream nurtured by parents who sacrificed everything, a dream strengthened by hard work, discipline, and resilience, a dream that refused to be limited by age. Today, millions of fans wear his name on the back of their shirts. Children copy his dribbles on playgrounds around the world. But behind every celebration is the same young boy who once played football in the streets simply because he loved the game. No shortcuts, no excuses, just passion, determination, and relentless belief. And perhaps the most incredible part of this story is that it's far from over. The world hasn't seen the best of Lamine Yamal yet. The next chapter is still being written. Only time will tell just how great he can become. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more incredible stories about football legends, iconic athletes, world history, and the people who changed the game forever, at this very moment, the World Cup is currently going on, and hopefully the young footballer can lead his country to the ultimate prize. Perhaps by the time you're watching this, history has already been made. Or perhaps the greatest moment of his career is still just around the corner. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. This is only the beginning of a legacy that football fans will remember for generations. What do you think? Will he lift the World Cup trophy? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And tell us in the comments, do you believe Lamine Yamal will win the Ballon d'Or one day? Or is there an even greater chapter waiting to be written? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.